A controversial reform which would remove cultural obligations for Māori children in state care has passed its first vote in Parliament. The coalition government argues the bill is part of their commitment to the safety of children in care and will ensure a child's wellbeing and best interest is behind decision-making. The bill has been met with criticism by the Māori Party, the Waitangi Tribunal and Oranga Tamariki, the Ministry for Children, who say Māori children in care would lose contact with their culture if the bill is passed. For more on this, I sat down with ACT Party leader David Seymour. I want to start off with the changes that you're making to Oranga Tamariki, which is sort of like the Child Welfare Department for New Zealand. Now, you're removing responsibilities to the Treaty of Waitangi, which is New Zealand's founding document and the treaty between Māori and the Crown. Why are you doing this?
There's been circumstances where a child who was in a dangerous, abused situation was taken out by the state authority, put in another home where they would be safe, told that that was their quote-unquote forever home, and then taken out of that home and put back where they started. And people sitting in Australia say, why on earth would you do that? That's crazy. Well, the reason was the previous government said that Oranga Tamariki, that's the state agency, had to follow the Treaty of Waitangi, and their interpretation of the treaty was that it was more important for a child to be with people of their own ethnic background than physically safe, nurtured and loved. And these were called reverse uplifts. They happened, they're a total disgrace, and we're removing the part of the legislation that justified them.
You can see that as one extreme case, but for the majority of cases, having a consideration for Māori culture and upbringing, surely that's a good thing when you're removing a child from a home.
Well, first of all, it's multiple cases. I guess the challenge for you is how many do you think would be acceptable? Second of all, there's a hierarchy of needs for any child, and I would put physical safety right at the top. Then I'd talk about things like nutrition, shelter, love, education. Where in that hierarchy would you put culture? Probably not in the top three.
Te Pāti Māori, during the debate following the first reading of the bill on Tuesday night, said that this was exterminating any ounce of culture, identity and any sense of their Māori selves. How do you respond to those comments?
Well, I think the most important thing for people in Australia to recognise is that just because they're called the Māori Party, they don't speak for Māori. They don't speak for me. They don't speak for Karen Chua, our Minister responsible. They don't speak for Nicole McKee. In fact, according to the polls, they speak for perhaps 1 in 6 Māori who actually voted for them. The vast majority of New Zealanders, including the vast majority of Māori, want nothing to do with what I describe as race-fanaticism, where they say, look, of all the attributes that a person has, all the hopes and dreams and capabilities and foibles and flaws, the only thing that matters to us is your race. Actually, if you take individuals and do what's best for them on a case-by-case basis, that is the humane way to treat people. The way that Te Pāti Māori, or the Māori Party, view the world is that only one thing matters, and what we used to call that is racism. I think what's so astonishing is how little kickback they get to the views they express.
It's not just Te Pāti Māori though, it's to the Waitangi Tribunal as well. They've said that this would cause harm to vulnerable children. They also say that it's clear breaches of the guarantee to Māori of self-determination and the treaty principles of partnership and active protection. How do you respond to the how do you respond to the Waitangi Tribunal?
Well, again, the Waitangi Tribunal was set up in 1975 to investigate historic wrongs, of which there were many in New Zealand. I'm proud as a Kiwi that we have forensically examined our history and brought about redress for many past wrongs in colonial times. The Waitangi Tribunal, having settled all but one of the major cases, is now, and there's been dozens over the last 30 years, is now casting about for something to do. At the end of the day, they're unelected. Their views they're entitled to, but more and more people are starting to ask what their true purpose is and whether they're still necessary.
Currently, there is interpretations of the Treaty of Waitangi. They're the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, and you want to also change those interpretations and redefine them with an interpretation that's defined by the Parliament. Now, currently, Māori have the right to self-determination, but we've seen draftings of these principles, which would mean that all New Zealanders are equal under the law with the same rights and duties. We've seen a leaking of some of these principles under the Waitangi Tribunal as well. How is that progressing, and are you happy with what we've seen here?
Yeah, it's going fabulously well, and certainly people are very critical of our approach. We acknowledge that. But we actually think a healthy debate's overdue in New Zealand, because over the past 30 years, a combination of the Waitangi Tribunal we've mentioned, the courts, and the public service and some of the academics have decided the Treaty of Waitangi doesn't mean what it actually says, that the government has the right to govern, that all people have the right to self-determine, that all people have the same rights and duties. It's actually a wonderful document. You can read it in under 3 minutes. They've said it doesn't mean any of that. What it does mean is there is a partnership between two races, and they're a little bit like that guy in the castle just going by the vibe of the thing. Well, we say it's time that the treaty actually says what it means and means what it says. That means discarding some of this construction that says New Zealand is a partnership between races. The problem with saying it's a partnership between races is that in order to understand your political rights, you've actually got to look at your family tree. So if you happen to make the wise choice of becoming a New Zealand citizen, you will have a different place in New Zealand from me, because some of my ancestors are Māori.
It can get a bit confusing, particularly for an Australian audience. So you've got the Treaty of Waitangi, New Zealand's founding document, which allowed the Crown to settle here, if we make it that simple. And then, of course, throughout the years, if you've identified that courts and the Waitangi Tribunal have defined principles to enact the Treaty of Waitangi, this treaty between Māori and the Crown, and you just want to redefine it. But there's been mass protests we've seen around Waitangi Day that you're trying to remove Māori existence and culture from here. We've also seen criticisms that the briefing from the Waitangi Tribunal said that we're concerned about a substantial risk the bill could generate further division, and we really have seen that division. Are you concerned about what you're doing here?
No. Why would I be concerned about discussing the future of our country and our constitutional underpinnings? At the moment, there is a view that's been prevalent under the previous government that really infects a lot of the academic institutions, the public service, and even some of corporate New Zealand, that somehow we are engaged in this bizarre little state where there are two groups of people who have different rights. That has not worked anywhere else. It's not actually supported by what the treaty says, and it needs to, at the very least, be openly debated. All I say is this is a debate we need to have. I think it's actually something that, in polling, the overwhelming majority of New Zealanders believe in our view of it, and really it just takes a little bit more courage to want to give rise to or give effect to those voices and do the right thing.